You are listening to Rocky Trail Radio.
Hi Emily, how are you going?
Yeah, good, thanks Juliana. How are you?
Good. Hey, thank you so much for taking some time to chatting to me today. So to introduce you, a lot of our riders will know you from the start lines, especially in downhill and superflows and gravity events. You've raced with us for quite a bit, and you're a psychologist in real life.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know which one's the real life, the psychology or the mountain biking. I'm yet to determine which one's the real one, but yeah, kind of playing those dual roles of mountain biking and racing and then being a psychologist as well.
And it's so good that we have in our network of Rocky Trail racers so many people with different talents that we can draw on now, especially in these challenging times in a way. I find almost this whole coronavirus situation, I'm almost at that new normal stage in a way in my life, but certainly when it comes to mental health, I find for me personally, I've always taken it for granted. And I only realized that now, or maybe I've realized it over the last 6 months or a year's time or so already. And I remember early 2019, I was asked by a fellow business lady here on the Central Coast to do a speech on how I overcame a problem in my life and really had to think hard about it. Like, I've grown up in such a protected environment and everything has gone really well. So mental health as such was always or never on my mind actually. So now suddenly enter a really challenging business year, and then the bushfires in Australia, traveling to Europe, now the coronavirus, suddenly there are so many things going on. So thank you that I can have a chat to you now and then share this also with our community. There are so many buzzwords around us as well. So yeah, thanks that I can share this personal journey with you and also hear your side of things. Tell us a bit about you and how you've experienced these last few weeks or months as well.
Yeah, look, it's been a really interesting time. I feel like everything's just turned on its head. And we've all just been compelled to adjust to a way of life that in a lot of ways is really foreign. So I've had to, not only rethink what everyone else has had to rethink in terms of their personal life, and I'm sure a lot of mountain bikers are thinking about how do I train now and what does that look like, but also as a business owner and what does that look like now? How do I operate my business in this climate? And also how I show up as a psychologist in this time. And, I think, as you were saying, you hadn't really thought about mental health a lot before, and I think people have this idea that mental health is something that only applies to people perhaps who are going through mental health issues or something really extreme is coming up. But we all have a mind, we all have thoughts, we all have emotions, and we kind of need to know how to deal with our mind. And, I've just been really fortunate that, my work has been able to translate into sports and athletics and mainly mountain biking, and being able to sort of support mountain bikers to really kind of understand more about how they work, their mind and their mental game, and just being able to really honour that, especially during difficult times like now when everything's thrown upside down.
Yeah, and often, like you mentioned, we're thinking about getting help or seeking help if you're in a particular crisis situation, or even when we talk to some of our racers out on track, if we meet them from afar, they say, oh, you always, some of the podcasts we've already done were, with Josh Carlson, well-known riders, and they say, oh, could you do some with people like me? Like, normal riders, so to say. Yeah. So for me, this chat to you is very much for everyone out there. And you mentioned to me that among your clients, you have athletes across the board from pro level to amateur level as well. So talk us a bit through how you realized this along your career as a psychologist, where you say, wait a minute, there is something there, and what some of those athletes, their aha moments, what it is when it comes to mental health.
Well, we're all wanting to get the best out of our mountain bike experience, just like we're like wanting to get the best out of our life. And I think that some of the most dedicated athletes are the ones who are seen as sort of more the weekend warriors and just your average mountain biker. And, mountain biking is so pivotal to their life and their well-being, and just wanting to make sure that they're getting the most out of that experience. And whether or not you're just a weekend warrior or you're a pro, all mountain bikers will have gone through experience of injury or illness, or they're just not feeling kind of in the right headspace at that moment, or they're having a block with something, like they're trying to get to the next level of their own progression, but something's holding them back and they feel like it might have something to do with themselves, like something within themselves is holding them back. Or they're just trying to balance what life means. Like, how do I be a mountain biker and a business owner and a parent and all of the other things? And so I really feel like once a mountain biker really gets to understand their mind and their emotions and how they work, then they can get so much more out of their experience, no matter what end of the spectrum they seem to be on. So It's been kind of really rewarding work for me, because it means that I can tie both my knowledge of psychology and the mind and then also just my love of the outdoors, of adventure and of racing as well.
And you explained to me last time when we had a quick chat about this talk that, when we go riding, and even if I go riding, I feel so good about it afterwards. And only now, by being more mindful of this feeling good about it, I realize why that is. It's the nature, it's the energy that I draw from nature. It's riding past a favorite spot of mine on the track, and ideally riding with others around me. And you saying that this positive feeling can be sometimes deceiving, that it for some people can be an escape.
Yeah, well, I think, I have had the same experience as you. Like, when I'm in the natural world and I'm riding my bike and I'm with my friends, whether or not it's just we're out for the weekend or I'm racing or training or whatever the situation might be, I get that feeling, those endorphins, that positive feeling, also that sense of calm, which is really interesting because you're usually kind of doing something really technical or your heart's beating really fast, but at the same time you feel very at peace, and very at ease. And so mountain biking has the potential to give us all these incredible benefits. But one of the things I did notice is that sometimes people became almost reliant on mountain biking to satisfy all the needs of their mental health. So as soon as they were injured or ill, or they couldn't go riding, or life happened, suddenly they found it really hard to feel okay. It was like they needed to get out for that ride in order to, leave the troubles of the day behind, or they needed that feeling of racing in order to feel confident and good about themselves. And so it's this really fine balance between falling in love with the sport, getting the most out of the sport, but also not relying on it in a way where as if it falls down, your whole life falls down. And I know that sounds a little bit extreme, but I think we can all relate to this idea that mountain biking, it sometimes really can become the core of our life, and so much of our world is wrapped up in it. And then if for whatever reason, pandemic, illness, injury, life takes it away from us, we're a little bit stuck. We're like, how do I get all those feelings again? How do I, feel good about myself? How do I get motivated if I don't have this in my life? And so it's really about helping people find that balance.
So how can they then reimagine this sport, as you once called it?
Yeah. Well, I think this, to me, this has been a really interesting time. Like, with COVID-19, there's a lot of restrictions on riding, and obviously racing isn't happening unless it's virtual. And so there's a lot of almost people are being compelled to say, well, if I can't get on it out of my bike and I can't go racing and I can't train the way I normally would, now what? And so I think sometimes it's an invitation to just realize all of the benefits that you're getting out of mountain biking, but also making sure that you're paying attention to your entire life as well. Are you creating that balance with your family, with your business? Are you stretching and working on mobility and doing all of these other things that center around mountain biking? And now that we have a little bit of time, it's almost an invitation to start getting really well-rounded, I think, as a cyclist. And I think that's an opportunity.
Okay, great to see this as an opportunity rather than a punishment. And there's also, there was a couple of buzzwords out there as well. You know, it's all about mindfulness at the moment. Lots of yoga sessions out there that you can tune into and everything. And what I've found for us also as a business, what we want to help people to do is, yes, being mindful, but then also build resilience to such situation. What's your take on that, mindfulness versus resilience?
I think the two are very interwoven. Like, as you're saying that, I'm like, literally two of the biggest skills that we work on in terms of creating that athletic performance is mindfulness and resilience. And so I think that those two things come together really nicely. In terms of just maybe deconstructing those buzzwords a little bit, I think with mindfulness, a lot of people understand that it is present moment awareness. It's being in the now, it's being present, it's being open to what's happening in front of you. But the other really important aspect of mindfulness is that we're being present, that is, we're being focused on the here and now, but we're doing so in a non-judgmental way. So usually we're focused on the present moment, but we've got this commentary running in our head about it. So say, for example, you're writing and you're present in the moment and you can feel that maybe something's a little bit off, or, you know, you're not taking corners correctly, or, you know, your line's a little bit off or something like that. We're aware and we're mindful and we're present, but sometimes we have this narrative going in the background, which is very critical. I shouldn't have done it like that. Why can't I get this? Everyone else is better than me. And so mindfulness is about not only being present to what's happening, but also being able to do so in a non-judgmental way and not have everything overshadowed by this really kind of critical, judgmental voice. And I think that's so important. You know, it's so important for our experience of mountain biking. You know, I think some of the best days are when you go out and you're just totally in tune with what's happening and you let go of the commentary. You know, you let go of the self-talk and you're just totally kind of saturated in the moment and you're just really focused on what's happening. And I think everyone can attest to them being among the best days we've had on the bike. That's maybe the mindfulness sort of aspect of it. Resilience is, I guess, our ability to weather the storms of stress and adversity in life. You know, not get crippled by stress, be able to bounce back from adversity. And I think at the moment, COVID-19 is providing us such great resilience training because it's bringing up all sorts of things for us. We're getting frustrated because we can't ride like we normally would. All of the races are being cancelled. You know, some are like being kind of postponed indefinitely. And so we need to be able to bounce back from this. We need to be able to see the opportunity in this. We need to be able to keep working on our fitness and our life and our skills, even without all of our normal things in place. So to me, this is a perfect time to be practicing both mindfulness and resilience so that when we get back on the trails, we have those skills even more firmly embedded.
Because you hear sometimes that people say it's not just always about the uber positive thinking. And that's when usually the resilience then comes into play, where they say you can't just talk everything good. Not everything is perfect at the moment. And if you think too positively, that might actually divert you from reality in a way. And you might not even see some of the opportunities or some of the things or work on your own issues.
This is so true. I'm finding this a lot at the moment. So I've had athletes with a lot of races being cancelled. Everything from the Olympic Games up until your local club races and everything in between. Now, a lot of people have said, and there's a common sentiment, that it's like, look, people are losing their lives, their jobs, you know, our country's being sort of totally thrown upside down. It's just a race, don't care about it, don't worry about it. In the bigger scheme of things, it doesn't matter. And while I think it is important that we have that perspective, I think we also need to allow ourselves the opportunity to just realize that kind of sucks. Like, you know, and we have to, and maybe this is a bit of a strong word, but almost grieve the loss of business as usual for mountain biking. Like you could have had someone who had a whole year of racing ahead of them and they were at peak performance. Everything was just perfectly set up for a year of incredible racing, and suddenly there's coronavirus and it all disappears. And I think we need to just acknowledge that and feel the grief around that and allow ourselves to feel that almost before we can see the opportunity in it. Because I think if we rush too quickly to see the positives, we discount our ability to just realize that this is a bit frustrating and it's a bit upsetting and it's a bit overwhelming and there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's letting yourself feel that is not weak. In fact, it's important to let yourself feel that as part of being resilient.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good takeaway, I think, definitely. Let's talk a bit about our connection to each other as well. I found that in the last couple of weeks, I was looking to our Rocky Trail community, especially to get a bit of strength. And just this last weekend, we tried and launched a few online activities and initiatives, like, a Rocky Trail Free Rides Challenge. And I somehow, looking at the hashtags and looking at the photos online, it made me feel so good because I felt like someone else is doing the same thing out there as me. Can you explain a little bit about how we all somehow connected, or what this energy does among us?
It's so important. I think that every mountain biker understands this sense of community is part of what makes it such a beautiful sport. We can feel connected not only to people we ride with, but people who, across the other side of the world, we're watching someone's, follow cam, and we're feeling so connected to that person and their experience. We've never met them. They might speak another language, but there is just some unsaid connection that we all have because we all understand what it means to ride bikes and love riding bikes and love racing. And so I think that these challenges and everything that you're doing at the moment really brings that back, because I feel like we were feeling the absence of it. We were in social isolation. We couldn't go riding with our mates. Like, you could really only be riding with someone who was in your household. And suddenly all those threads of community sort of disappeared. And that's really hard. It's really hard for a lot of people because that's a huge part of the energy of the sport. You go to any of your races and there isn't energy there. And you're meeting people you've never even met before. Or you're like past them and you smile and they smile, and there's something that happens in that moment that's incredibly magical. And I love this idea of us, businesses like yourself being able to think creatively about how we virtually really thrive in that community space, and we feel connected to each other, and we're like, I'm not the only one doing this. There's other people doing this challenge as well, or I'm doing this virtual race against somebody, and then suddenly all of that connectivity starts to come back up again. And I think that's really important to help sustain people during this time.
Mm-hmm. I always think of our riders out there as well, and how I could help them. And I can imagine everyone is in very different kind of life situations. Some of our riders are at home, working from home. A lot of them will have kids at home that they need to homeschool, or running a business while still trying to hopefully get out for a ride and this and that. And then also I find sometimes we're almost bombarded now with things that we should be doing and we have to be doing, meditate in the morning and then get your house in order and try and get some skills up and running and make sure the kids are doing all their homework and are drawing and painting and doing all the artwork. Like, can you maybe give some recommendation how a day could look like, or how we can include some of those resilience, let's call it exercises or elements, into our daily flow? Like, can you recommend a meditation one can do, or some portals or some resources? How would you go about it? Like, one of my things that I do every day, I make sure that all the beds are made in the house. Like, I just do one lap of the house, make sure everything's neat, and then I start. I think I find if I do that, then I already feel good about the day. But still, I struggle with scheduling some things.
Totally. And I think the first thing is to take the pressure off having it be perfect. Because I think there is a lot of expectation that it's like, who's going to make the best out of this quarantine experience? And this is the time to get a meditation practice and do yoga and get your core strength going, and then try do some skills in your backyard.
Because you need to be ready when it's all normal again.
Yeah, you need to be ready. And then plus you on top of that, you've got to work from home, homeschool your kids, all of this stuff. And I think we just need to lift the pressure or expectation and realize that trying to get a flow in a new world with a new paradigm is going to be a bit clunky and a bit awkward. I think we can all remember those really early stages of mountain biking where we just started to learn and it was all really awkward and it wasn't perfect and we were falling off and I don't know, just making all these mistakes. And I think there's a newness about what's happening at the moment that really means that we need to back off this pressure and just try as best we can to establish a flow or routine that suits where we're at this point in time, because I'm realizing that everyone who's watching this and all the different races and riders are going to have different experiences, different households, different demands. And so it's really important that each person is finding something that's really unique to them. I do think a little bit of structure is helpful. So I make my bed in the morning as well. I'm like you, and there's some science behind why that matters and why it's important. But I do think in the morning, if you can do something intentional that is helping your headspace and your emotional state in the mornings is really helpful. So it might be feeling accomplished by making all the beds. It might be sitting out with a cup of tea or a cup of coffee in your backyard and just kind of staring up at the sky and just being there with yourself for a minute. It might be having a formal meditation practice. It doesn't need to look a certain way, but making sure that people take that time out just to do something that's setting them up and getting them in that state. We think about just before we race, we need to get ourselves in the state to race. We don't just stumble out of bed and get to the start line and be like, oh, well, okay, let's go. You know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of little processes that we go and do before we race because we know we need to be in the most optimal state. And it's really similar for life.
I love that analogy. I remember when we were doing downhill starts, and to some extent at our gravity superflow starts, the same thing. Like in a downhill race, you have the start line at the top, and you'd usually, especially for the final run, you start with the juniors and the under 13s, and they're lining up, and they're all bubbly and they're screaming and talking, chatting. And the further you get towards the elites, the quieter the start line gets. And you might have the top 5 elites there, men and women alike, and you can drop a needle. It's so quiet. They're not even talking to each other. I sometimes dared not even say anything. I just pointed to the line and let them go because they're in such a headspace. So yeah.
Isn't it so true? And there's a reason for that. And the thing is, inside all of the elite level races are doing something different. So some of them might be going through a visualization. Some of them actually might be listening to a certain song or certain music. Other people might be doing some breath work or some stretches. Just like everyone at the beginning of the day is probably going to need to do something different. But just like we don't start a race by accident. We're very intentional about how we show up to a race. And I just hope that people can be as intentional as about how they show up for each day in their life. It's like taking a minute to do whatever it is that you need to do to get into the right headspace to go about your day. And you'll notice it makes such a big difference. Think about the races, that you've done where you haven't taken the time to really get in that state, and how different that is to the race that you've done where you have taken a moment to, calm down your body and stretch and get ready. And so I think a lot of these principles that we already know are so helpful can be translated to our life as well.
And one other thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on as well is this importance to being out in nature. And what that does to our mind and to our bodies and our energy flows. What's your input there?
Well, I think we all know just from our own anecdotal experience how powerful nature is. You kind of get out into the middle of the bush and there's something about it that you just feel different. But what we know and understand is happening is that our body's nervous system, so that is almost the part of our body that's doing the work of living, that actually drops down and becomes so much more calm when we're in a natural environment. So for example, if we're by the ocean and we can hear the sort of sounds of the crashing waves, if we're out in the bush and we've got that really beautiful silence, it's not an eerie silence, it's just like you can hear some birds and some crunching of leaves, but other than that, everything feels really still. And what happens is our body starts to match that. Our body starts to drop down into that stillness of the natural world, and we sort of meet the environment with where we're at. So, I mean, if you're going into the middle of New York City, your nervous system will meet the energy of New York City. If you're going into the middle of the bush, your nervous system is going to meet that energy as well. So it's so important that we get that time in nature, because simply being there, not doing anything, just simply being in the natural world has a really profound and measurable effect, not only on how we feel, but actually what's happening in our body. Our heart rate, our cortisol level, a whole bunch of things sort of change and shift when we get into the natural world. So, there's so much evidence to support how important that is. And I really recommend anyone who can, using their one kind of opportunity a day to get out and exercise, is that they're really taking that time, if it's available to them, to get out into the elements and into the natural world. Just because we're not mountain biking the way that we were, we still absolutely need that for our mental health and well-being.
Yeah, I was surprised actually, and I noticed that, and I felt that on my own body earlier this year. I was over in Austria, and I'd just been diagnosed with this tinnitus. And in the grand scheme of things, it's not life-threatening. It's a thing that you have to accept and deal with. But for me at the time, it was like the worst thing that had happened to me all life, I felt. And apart from all the cortisone I had to take and all the music and things that I tried to listen to, the one thing that really helped me the most was just getting out into the forests. At the time, it was minus 10, 12 degrees in the mornings, the crisp air, a bit of snow, a bit of ice around me, and then just going among trees was what helped me the most. And that's what I also crave here the most, more so than even going to the beach. I love going into the bush and being among trees. Even here at Urimbet, our local trails, I have the one spot on top of Jelly Lake Climb, where when the sun comes in and I feel like I'm on the top, where I really feel calm, like you say. And if I think you even can take such spots with you, like that happy place that people talk about, and when you meditate, or when you before you wake up or before you fall asleep, when you think of those places. I have my spots even in my parents' house or Martin's parents' house. I have my little spots where I go to in my mind and instantly feel happy and calm again.
And I think that's a really good point that you make just now, because sometimes if we feel like we're geographically or physically disconnected from something, that we've lost that thing altogether. Whereas actually our mind has incredible power to bring back feelings associated with that place or that memory. And so, that's why visualization works so well. Like, you can be at the top of a track and not be riding it, but you can have stored in your mind a visual representation. And just taking yourself down that will elicit some of those same responses. And so what you're saying is that even if we can't be in our favorite spot at the moment, like say I'm incredibly lucky, like I live in the Illawarra. I mean, the escarpment is literally like 2 minutes from my house, and I'm in the bush. So I'm really lucky that way. But I realize a lot of people don't have that level of accessibility. Simply sitting down and bringing that memory of that place to mind, or even the memory of the last time you all went mountain biking with your friends and you had a great time, the mind is so powerful that memory alone can start to elicit all of the feelings that go along with that, without even needing to be there. So I think sometimes as adults we lose our imagination. Kids are great with their imagination, but as adults we lose it a little bit. But at this time, I think we can really call on our imagination and our memory to remember these things and bring them to our mind, and notice we get the same physical and emotional responses we did just by being there.
Yeah, no, that's really a nice way of thinking of it, yes. So if someone is listening to this now or seeing us, and they want to have a chat to you one-on-one, or even as an expert, a psychologist in their own area, how would they have to go about that? Like, what's the process for someone to become a client of yours, or how does that work?
I mean, just as a explanation for people in general, if someone is feeling like they're actually sort of struggling with some mental health issues at the moment, and maybe the pandemic has brought up a lot of stuff, and you are really struggling, and it is quite significant and serious for you at the moment, my recommendation is to go to your GP, and you can do a telehealth conversation with your GP, and they can recommend a psychologist in your area. So that I just want people to know that that's kind of a really good pathway that they can go to if they're sort of struggling. The best way in terms of staying in contact with me or reaching out to me is probably the best is to go either on Instagram or Facebook, and just follow along, and then you can message me there, or you can send me a DM or whatever. So it's Fostering Hope Psychology, and that's either on Facebook and it's on Instagram as well. Or you can just email me, emily@fosteringhope.com.au, and then I'm happy to answer whatever questions that you have. And I think it's really important that even if people don't want to go and chat one-on-one, that we're still just having those important conversations, whether that's on social media, whether it's when we're out riding or at a race or anything like that. It's really important that we take the stigma away from talking about our mind and our mental health as if it's this really taboo topic, and we just find ways of being able to talk about it, just like we talk about nutrition or we talk about, our physical strength. To me, it's so important that we keep these conversations going about mental health and our mind and how we optimize that, because it's so important for us to be getting the most out of our riding experience and our life as well.
That's I think a really nice way to end this conversation for now. I hope that we'll get some feedback from riders out there, and maybe there's some other topics that they want you or us to chat about, and then hopefully I'll check in with you in a little while, and I wish you a beautiful day. What have you planned for the rest of today?
So I've actually done a whole bunch of videos today for some reason. So I do a lot of stuff around meditation, and I do a lot of stuff around performance psychology. So I'm just at the moment creating kind of a lot of content for people, because my practice is continuing. People can still see me one-on-one, but I think it's a time where people just really can benefit from getting some content or knowledge, and they're at home and maybe they can take 15 minutes or half an hour to listen to something like this and get out of it. So that's what I'll be doing for the rest of the day. But I really appreciate being able to chat to you. I just feel the mountain bike community and Rocky Trail have been such a huge part of my life, and it's really lovely to think that we can all come together and to support each other during this time, and that I can be a part of these conversations.
Thank you. And thank you for giving us your time and your thoughts. They're really powerful, I think, and let's spread them. Great. Thank you.
You are listening to Rocky Trail Radio.